This is scary. Directly across the river from our house was an abandoned coal mine. It proved to be a child's playground delight. The kids climbed all over it, turning what wheels they could. Because the tools had been left behind, they devised ways to unscrew bolts and nuts. Vernon wanted the two older children to walk into town for one day, so they put the babies to sleep. Then crossed the rivers to the mine. She looked and called June. When they didn't answer, she began to search the buildings, of which there were several. One building had a huge metal fan on one side, inside the walls, under a hole 12 to 14 feet across that penetrated straight down. There she found the children sitting on the edge, dropping rocks into the water many feet below. When Verna listened to the length of time that it took for the rocks to hit the water, she went sick with fright. They quietly began taking them one by one out of the building. Many nights she awoke in sweat, thinking about the depth of that hole. That's her experience. Now here's her dad's. Not to be undaunting, they had to make it short. They had some mining cars in there, and they would go down the rail, and then they would hit, and they would dump their load. And so these cars were left there, like she said. The cars were the mine was abandoned, but thought it might be come back into use. So this last little paragraph: with the persistent ingenuity of a child's mind, Jessie had found a method of stopping the cars before they reached the end of the track. After pushing a car to the top of the tipple, Jessie then ran halfway down the track and yelled, "Let her go." The other kids gave the car a push and jumped in, and down they came. Jessie had found some steel spokes, and when the car approached, he threw the spokes into the wheels to stop its progress. When they joyously exhibited this talent, it was my turn to lay awake and get gray hair. We had to put a stop and go into the mine at all. So mother and father with abandoned mine in their house. I will skip this story. This is about a father who had a plane, and he did a lot of flying. He took his family one time. They were running out of gas, so they landed on an abandoned Air Force field and immediately got an escort from the Air Force people. It was kind of an interesting. One thing to mention is John Peacock. Margaret was Robert's cousin, and Margaret's mother and Robert's father were sisters. Anyway, the Peacocks came. They're the ones that first heard the gospel. They came to Utah, and she came with her husband. He died, so Margaret, Sophie, her mother, was a widow with Margaret, and while living in Salt Lake, they ended up joining the Church of the Firstborn. And ended up, there's a fort in the Weaver Canyon, at the mouth of Weaver Canyon, that they stayed there. They were called the Morrisites. John Morris was predicting the end of the second coming, and stayed there. They grew to be quite a large grouping there, about 500 people, and they ended up having what they call the Morrisite War, which is a 3-day event where, I think 17 or 18 people got killed. You can read about it in Wikipedia, quite interesting. But anyway, she was part of that group. And the Peacocks were the only ones. James Peacock was the only one of her child that lived to have children. And so just an interesting story if you want to read about the Morrisites and Sophie Young and her daughter Margaret. Sophie Young actually died at that fort just, probably a year before the battle. The other thing, if you ever get a chance, look up Albert Melvin Devey. He was the one to find a plane crash that happened up by Alpine in the mountains. They wrote a whole old-time news radio program that could be presented. Quite the story. I think he made, 50 or 70 trips up there before he found it. People were looking for it. Millie Earhart came out, and also she could not find the lost plane. But pretty interesting story. And I'm going to end here. I'm out of time.